the numbers speak for themselves. It's been incredible to watch the rocket ship ride of this song.
Well, with the new world, with social media, you can put together a song, you can put it out there, and something like this can happen.
I think the American people are seeing our roads are not fixed and they're falling apart. Our schools are garbage.
The article from The Guardian ends on the idea that Oliver Anthony is punching down.
That makes me so angry.
Hello, welcome to the Pop Culture Contrarian podcast with Thomas, Sterling, and Andrew.
Hey, guys.
Our topic for today is rich men north of Richmond. Right wing? All right. So, Andrew, I think you've been the one who's kind of been taking the lead on this song by Oliver Anthony, titled Rich Men North of Richmond. So can you tell us a little bit about how it's been received, what the response has been?
Well, the numbers speak for themselves. It's been incredible to watch the rocket ship ride of this song on social media, on streaming services, and on the charts.
I've been seeing it everywhere.
Yeah, we'll get into this later, but it is being touted as extremely popular in right-wing circles, and that is the question, is it right-wing? But just for some numbers, I think in the last 8 days, it has been viewed over 18 million times on YouTube. I think that it's approaching 100,000 song downloads. It's, I think, over 17 million streams on Spotify.
Goodness.
It is approaching the top of the top 100 charts, which is just absolutely incredible.
Because this guy, I mean, he's not part of some big production company, right?
He is just a guy with a guitar and a dream.
And a voice.
And a voice, and which we will listen to that soon. And you guys, if you haven't heard it already, yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. So before we do listen to it, I just do want to say on the voice thing, that seems to be universal. Everyone can agree, guy's got a voice. He can sing. Pretty much no matter who you are, you can agree on that. So let's dive right in. Let's watch this music video.
I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay, so I can sit out here and waste my life away, drag back home and drown my troubles away. It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with an whole soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know
That's true.
what you think.
No kidding.
Wanna know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do, 'cause your dollar ain't and it's taxed to no end, 'cause the rich men north of Richmond.
That play on words is just brilliant.
I'll have to go back to that later. I'm not quite sure.
Richmond, north of Richmond.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wish politicians would look out for minors, and not just minors on an island somewhere. Lord, we got folks in the street, ain't got nothing to eat, and the obese milking welfare. God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. Young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground, 'cause all this damn
He's not
country
holding
does
anything back.
is keep on
No.
kicking them down. Lord, it's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with an whole soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do, 'cause your dollar ain't and it's taxed to no end, 'cause the rich men north of Richmond. I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for pay.
Whew.
Golly.
That's a good song.
Good grief, man. If that doesn't make you feel a certain way, I don't know. I'll tell you what. It's just absolutely wailing, mourning for America.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not what the world's coming to. It's what the world's come to.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get into the lyrics.
Yeah.
I guess
you all just heard them. Now we're going to walk you through them.
we didn't warn anybody, but yeah, there's some language.
Yeah. Sorry
And
about that.
Appropriately so, in my opinion. But,
Sometimes it's called for.
But, you know, I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bull pay. So I can sit out here and waste my life away, drag back home and drown my troubles away. In many ways, it's like a classic country mournful sort of song.
Right. That I think a lot of this song is very much classic traditional country, and that's why it's been a surprise to me to see the widespread appeal.
I think it's been the ongoing feeling of regular Americans more and more that they are working hard. Then the American dream is supposed to be, if you go out there and you work hard, you can have a good life. And they're absolutely breaking their backs. And this guy is breaking his back, working in a job that is not paying him what it's worth and is wasting his life.
Yeah.
And his life is valuable. And
the same work is worth less now.
it is worth less. He's getting paid less, and he is distraught about it. He feels trapped, and all he can do is go home and drink it away. It's a shame.
Yeah. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is.
Yeah.
That's,
In the chorus.
I definitely feel that every day. I wake up and I'm like, are the trans people stopping trying to castrate little boys? No? Dang.
Yeah. It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me and people like you. And this is true because I believe this is really an anthem for all Americans.
Yeah.
And people like me and people like you shouldn't just mean certain people.
No, I mean, he doesn't
means-
mean it to, he doesn't intend it to mean only certain people.
No, I think it means all the downtrodden, backbone people of America.
All the people that Richmond, north of Richmond, are taking advantage of.
It means we the people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. And that is just the feeling.
Yeah, it feels like, I mean, it sounds like he's mourning the loss of his country.
Because we are losing it.
Right. We see,
And we have lost it.
we see a value system that's being imposed upon us. I mean, not just debated, imposed.
Right.
And when you're feeling the weight of that or seeing that happen, there's a distress, there's a discouragement that comes of that. And I think he's kind of
despair.
Yeah, despair. He's capturing that in the sense that his life, his toil, his work has become toil. It's difficult. It's wasting his life away. He goes, on in the song how the dollar isn't worth what it used to be. It's being taxed even more on top of that. He can't seemingly get ahead. This new world is, what's the world gotten to? It's almost unrecognizable to him. And I think that aspect is probably a theme that a lot of Americans can connect with. I mean, it's changed so fast that we often comment about this, and I know I write about this, how in just a little under a decade, or just go even just a little over a decade ago, the mentality of people, we wouldn't as a culture accept what we're accepting now. It's so unrecognizable.
Today, the Patriot Post, where we all work, wrote an article about how it was about many things, but one of the things it touched on was how in New Jersey, 3 school districts tried to pass a law saying if a child decides they're transgender at school, the parents have to be informed. And the New Jersey governor is working hard to make sure that that doesn't get to be the case so that the schools can keep that secret from parents, which is just so far beyond anything we could have imagined a decade ago.
And that leads into the next part of the chorus, living in the new world with an old soul. And how do you navigate it when your values, when everything you believe in, everything that you have grown up and put your hard work towards, everything that you have dedicated your whole life to is moving on, and the world's moving on without you and casting you aside and saying you're not valuable in this new world that we're building.
Yeah. I wish politicians would look out for minors and not just minors on an island somewhere. I understand why people say this is political, because minors, you're talking about coal, right? And that's fossil fuels, and it's been politicized, but everything's been politicized. This song itself is not political. It's just that the world around us has been so incredibly politicized. We should all agree that Epstein's Island is something we don't want to happen ever again to anyone ever.
And we should also all agree that the jobs of minors are important and that those people are important.
Especially if
communities are important.
Especially if a whole community, a whole city, a whole state, West Virginia, has been built around that one career. You can't just say, we're done, moving on. You have to acknowledge it and give them something for all their effort.
And not just tell them, oh, you can go learn how to code.
Right.
I think back to the chorus, the line that catches everyone, obviously, is these rich men north of Richmond.
Alluding to
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C.
Right.
And
we know that. And, like you said, they want, Lord knows, they all just want total control. I mean, that's what it is, more and more control over people's lives. And so I think that captures, and regarding our question, is this right wing, to distrust Washington and the government is what Americans have done for generations.
Right. It's an American tradition from both the left and the right.
Yeah. And in fact, you could argue for a long time the left was more distrusting of Washington.
I don't even think that's an argument. That's just factual. The left was more distrusting of Washington. I mean, the Vietnam War, which side was it that was, anti the people in Washington? It wasn't the right.
It's kind of like people trying to understand the phenomenon of Donald Trump. Like, why did his populism and his popularity caught so many people in the country? Well, because there is a divide, and the divide is primarily between this elitist class who has a vision for changing America, and they're putting their energy into doing that. And that change is to the detriment of your working class, your hard working class that has had expectations of this system that we put together that protects rights and everything like that is the best that the world has ever seen. And now you're coming along and saying, oh, we're gonna redo it. And in fact, you know what? It was bad. That old system that you guys, it's bad. It was racist. It was sexist. It was everything.
Well, on that line, Thomas, I don't know why you're saying that that's the rise of Donald Trump when we all know the only reason you'd vote for Donald Trump is because you're racist, obviously.
Anyway, so I think that captures this feel of people. And I think it's more of an emotion than it is necessarily a list of ideals necessarily. The actual issues he talks about are almost tangential to the emotion of the song.
Well, this song is, in my opinion, the definition of poetry or the definition of art. And that is putting into words what everyone feels but doesn't know how to say.
They want to know what you think. They want to know what you do. And they think you don't know, but I know that you do. And you do. And we all do. But trying to explain it to, our wives, our friends, our, whoever, it can be hard to do. It can be hard to figure out, how do I put all this obvious corruption into words to someone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, even if they, maybe also feel the same thing I'm feeling. And it reminds me of Jordan Peterson's analysis of how he rose to fame. And that's what he was told over and over again after his speaking engagements was, you were saying the things that I felt, but I just didn't know how to say. You're giving me words for things I already knew. And that's what Oliver Anthony is doing here as well. He's giving us a song for what we already knew.
Yeah, in fact, that's the reason why this song has resonated, because it's obviously hit people in the feels is a better term, but they're sensing this truth behind it that they relate to.
Yeah. Well, because for everyone all over America in the past 2 years, you've noticed your dollar is worth less. And I'm not going to say elections have consequences, but elections have consequences. And the consequences have been bad for everyone in America, left, right, center, or none of the above. It's been bad for you. And that's what this song is talking about.
It's been bad for the Richmond, north of Richmond.
Maybe not for the rich people north of Richmond, but for the average people, no matter your political affiliation, your average person who clocks in and clocks out at the end of the day at just a job, not a career, it's been bad for you.
And he mentions that even more so with how just unjust that situation is with, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. Young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground because all this damn country does is keep on kicking them down. And he says this on the year that has been the largest year of suicides in American history.
So far, the numbers say it's been an 11% increase over last year. And we've only been keeping track of this exact statistic since 2007, but in that time, the largest increase other than this year was only 2.7%.
So why do we think that is? Absolute hopelessness and the feeling of being abandoned and being devalued and being kicked down.
And he specifically mentions young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground. That's true. They are the ones that's the largest demographic of people who commit suicide. But I do think it's worth mentioning that, young men in America today have not been told, you're great, you're good, you can do anything you want, and you're a good influence on this world. They've been told almost the exact opposite.
Yes.
From childhood, that men are evil and toxic, and you should do everything you can not to be a man.
And not to skip over the person he describes as the person on welfare, which is also a very ugly thing. And I think we ought to be careful not to demonize those people, but also to recognize that this system is doing horrible things to them as well.
Clearly, they're in a bad place, and that's not where anyone wants them to be. But it is totally reasonable to say, if that's what you're spending the government money on, I don't think I should have to pay that money to you.
And I think it's more a commentary not on the people, but on the system and how unjust it is, and how as young men are working and trying their best to do the right thing, they are punished for it.
I have an anecdote on this exact topic, go ahead. I deliberately avoided putting myself tens of thousands of dollars in debt to a university or college because I was like, I don't know what job I'm going to get afterward that's going to let me pay for all that. I don't know what I'm interested in. Maybe I'll decide to do this when I know, I have a career path to get out of that debt. But basically, I didn't want to go into this debt. And now the current administration thinks they can just proclaim, we're going to forgive everyone's student debt. And I'm like, hang on, I avoided that debt because I knew I didn't want it hanging over my head. Now you want me to pay for other people who didn't avoid it because they didn't think it through? And I'm not okay with that.
And furthermore, your lived example, and then also these guys' example who are in the mines, literally having to pay off somebody's Ivy League, whatever.
Right. Absolutely ludicrous.
Debt, and it doesn't benefit them in any way at all. And in fact, those very people who they're having to pay for are the ones calling them deplorable, and they're going north of Richmond.
Right.
And meanwhile, leaving the backbone of America in the dirt.
I do think that his reference to Richmond, north of Richmond, I do believe that 5 of the wealthiest counties in the U.S. are around D.C.
I absolutely believe that.
So I mean,
Yeah, but
there's
politicians aren't supposed to make money, are they?
See, that's actually, I've thought about this, and I thought if I ever run for an office, I'm going to, in speeches, say, if I, obtain this senatorship or whatever, and I leave after 6 years not having hundreds of thousands more dollars than I started with, I have not served you well. Because the way the system works today, if you're not walking away with more money than you started with, you weren't effective.
I think there's only one president in history that did that. If I recall, it might have been Truman.
It was one of those right in that era. I think it may have been Truman.
It was the reason why the presidential pension was created, because he left and just went back to whatever job he was doing afterwards and was practically destitute. And then, of course, he was taken care of in the end, but he had no intentions of taking anything from the American people. That's a rare thing.
It did not used to be that politicians automatically became wealthy. And it shouldn't be that politicians automatically become wealthy.
Well, anyways, we've bounced around the lyrics a little bit, but I think we've probably captured a lot of the substance, at least.
why it's resonating with people. Or a lot of folks can relate to this. I mean, you don't have to be working a dead-end job or a job where you feel like you're not getting ahead to not at least relate to the fact that your dollar isn't worth as much anymore.
Just go to the grocery
Your
store.
taxes keep seemingly going up.
And what do you have to show for it? I think the American people are seeing our roads are not fixed and they're falling apart. Our schools are garbage. Our healthcare system has been gutted through lobbyists.
Yeah.
We have hardly anything to show for our taxes. And meanwhile,
Ukraine's got an awful lot to show for our taxes.
Meanwhile, we're shipping all of our money and resources to foreign countries. And there are people who are literally don't have anything to eat on the streets of America. Now, granted, if you compare to other countries in the world, we are still very wealthy. And I don't want to discount that. We've got a lot going for us, but it is in grave danger.
Right. That actually, and I actually left this out of our notes here, but one thing we wanted to talk about was what has the response been from the left and the right?
Yeah.
And one of the responses I saw from 2 different articles I read was the idea that somehow this song, and we just read you the lyrics and you just listen to it yourself, so you evaluate this claim for yourself, but the article from The Guardian ends on the idea that Oliver Anthony is punching down.
That makes me so angry.
So it makes Andrew angry. Audience, do you think this is punching down? The song Richmond, North of Richmond is punching down?
Punching down on who?
Right. Well, their claim was the 300-pound, 5'3" person.
Well, he's not punching down on that person. He is just exposing the corruption in the system that's harming both parties.
The response from the left has kind of been similar to the response to the Jason Aldean song, Try That in a Small Town.
And that was my pitch for the title of this podcast episode was Try That in a Small Town 2, Electric Boogaloo, but they shot me down.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
We know what Sterling's into.
Yeah. No, but it's interesting that the left, politically wise, is not creative when it comes to its objection. All it does is project its own stereotypes that is created to place upon the right or the working class or white people as just racist. In fact, when we read some of their responses, immediately they would talk about this as promoting white nationalism.
Right. And they're always talking about dog whistles.
And it's like, where's the racism? And there's race is not mentioned once in this song.
Not at all.
There's not a shred of racism in this.
And the
this
reference
is an ode to the forgotten American people.
and one of the things that struck me in these leftist articles about the song was they when hearing and reading the line, I wish politicians would look out for minors and not just minors on an island somewhere, which is a clear reference to Epstein's island, Jeffrey Epstein, that whole ordeal that the entire country went through and knows is real. So it's not like this is a conspiracy theory. This is a real thing that happened. But their response, the left's response was, Oh yeah, that's some QAnon related affiliated conspiracy theory. So they just, at every possible opportunity, they just resort to smearing anyone who doesn't get in line with their narrative.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there is evil corruption and there is tyranny and there is just evil power, and the people who are driven by power is the only end. It's not truth. It's not goodness. It's not justice. It is power at all costs.
Well, their theory would say that there is nothing else than power. No one does anything for any reason other than power. So why shouldn't they just openly seek power? Their ideology itself incentivizes them to behave in the worst possible way.
Well, I think that this song is an outcry and a lament, and it is a mournful song of what America was and of the injustice. And in many ways, it's a protest song. And I think it is a call to say, listen, we have a voice and this is not what we want.
Right. I think what you said earlier was, and it was a good line, was this song is an ode to the death of the American dream. And that's a very good line. And it's in the high lonesome style, which is a common style in country, but it gets this message across really well. The way he's singing is called High Lonesome. And it very much works.
It's very natural and raw. I mean, the video, he's just surrounded by his dogs.
Yep.
He's standing out in the woods next to his deer stand.
Yep.
That's highly relatable for a lot of people.
For a huge section of the country.
You might not know that from looking at social media or mainstream media, which are dominated by leftist types, but that is America in many ways. Well, what I am really frustrated by is how it is being spun as this right-wing, racist, nationalist anthem when it could be further from that. This is a song for the American people.
For the working class.
Yes, which should concern everyone.
Right.
Because that is our foundational populace. We the people.
Well, I mean, I think the left is gaslighting it. They don't want to admit that.
And they're great at doing that.
Right. They don't want to admit that there is legitimacy to the cry that the song is effectively making.
Right. Well, because they're all behind Joe Biden, who's now running on his economic strategy, on Bidenomics, and how good it has been for America. So they can't admit, yeah, no, everything is terrible in terms of the economy. Milk costs more, eggs cost more. Why are these songs that are, Try That in a Small Town, this one, Richmond, north of Richmond, very kind of traditional country songs, suddenly blowing up and gaining mass appeal and being talked about everywhere in the country? And it's a little bit confusing to me because country talks about this stuff all the time and has for decades. Maybe not so much in the past decade, but this is just a return to form for country music.
Yeah, there is an interesting thing about this one that's different from the Jason Aldean one. And I think this is what I think is showing, ironically, the new world in which we're living in. The gatekeepers of the old world would have been your music industry heads who would determine whether or not they thought you were worthy of that you could be a potential star. Well, with the new world, with social media, you can put together a song, you can put it out there, and something like this can happen.
Right, and that's what happened here.
And so, which makes it even harder, I think, for the claim that this is somehow some sort of racist dog whistle. No, it's not. It's people relating to it and organically relating to it and saying, oh, wow, this guy's saying what I'm feeling.
And what I'm experiencing.
And so that is kind of interesting in the sense of a positive of the new world, even though he's kind of, the song is kind of regretting this new world. Now, when he mentions new world, that's not what he's focusing on, obviously. But I think there's this fascinating element where he expresses he's this old soul.
Yeah.
Meaning the values that he holds are changing drastically in this new world.
Or being threatened.
They're being threatened. They're being challenged. They're being told. The suggestions are being made. Oh no, those values that you held, those are actually evil, wicked. It reminds me of the scripture that says, they're calling good evil and evil good.
Yeah, and then the verse that I can't get out of my head on that same topic is another one. I think it's in 1 Corinthians that says, "Do not let what you know to be good be spoken of as evil," which is, to me, a little bit more meaningful because it puts the onus on you and on me to don't let this happen.
Yeah. Speaking about Bible verses, at the end of this podcast, we ought to play the Psalm 37 reference, the reference that he spoke at the recent concert. Sterling, you don't have to pull it up. I'll put it in after.
Okay. All right.
I guess moving on in the sense that I think the song is great for capturing this emotion, and it's capturing a truth. We have to be careful in also recognizing at the very same time, yes, we're seeing this corruption of the rich men in Richmond, but at the same time, we still have our freedom in this country.
We may be being victimized, but we are not victims. And you're right. I think you two are maybe a little bit more optimistic about the world and the future than I am. But even still, there's no other place I would rather have been born than in America, because no one else in the history of time has had it better than Americans.
Absolutely agree.
So while this might be a dirge, it's not an entirely hopeless one. And I think that it's good to be able to say, yes, this is expressing what I'm feeling and thinking and my frustration, but we also can't use it as an excuse to say, well, forget it all. Life's worthless. Let's,
Right. And that's not what he's saying either. But yeah, it is. We can't let ourselves play this victimhood game, because that's so popular today to say, oh, I'm a victim because I have all these mental diseases, or illnesses. I'm a victim because, I'm transgender, or I'm a victim because I'm black, and being black is just automatically 10 times harder than anything else. And all these other things that you could be a victim for. And that's just not a game you want to play. There are no winners in that game. You're only going to be a loser if you play that game. And further, the left is better at it than we are. So we shouldn't play their game because they're going to beat us.
One thing I've noticed in the comment section on the YouTube video is that there's a lot of comments from people throughout the West, and I mean the Western world in general, which was fascinating to me. I've saw stuff from Sweden, from Germany, from Canada, from Australia, all with the same sentiment and feeling of living in the new world with an old soul, and lamenting not just the fall of America as we seem to be witnessing, but the fall of the West. And I think in many ways, America has been the leader and the pinnacle of Western civilization
since the 1950s. The reference I can bring to mind is from the TV show Peaky Blinders, which is set in Birmingham, England, in like 1920.
Yeah.
And there's some characters who are communists, and they're like, we need communism to empower the working man. And, at that time especially, that was more understandable because you hadn't seen the history of communism yet. But at one point, one character says, we can go to America. You won't need to be a communist there. They've already had their revolution, which is true.
Which is true.
We eliminated the class system. It's not entirely unpresent, but it's not like it is in any other country in the world. We are free in America to work hard and pull ourselves up by our bootstraps when we aren't being oppressed.
But listen, so goes America, so goes the world. So this is also a warning. Look, we're looking at this square in the eyes and saying, we see this and we're not okay with it.
Right. And the other point you were making about Sweden, Australia, all these other Western countries responding the same way to this song. Well, of course they are, because they're all being exposed to this globalist agenda as well. And I may have a problem with globalism, but it's specifically their agenda that's being pushed on all these countries. And that agenda is, everything you've ever done in the past is evil, and you have to, bow down to all the minorities and all these things. And so, yeah, we're all responding to the same thing. So we're going to have similar responses. That makes sense.
I do think that the one, you could say, argument to make this a more right-wing song is he's not calling on government to do anything for him.
That's true. He's not saying, government, come fix your corruptness.
Saying government quit.
Right.
Yeah, it's just
Get out.
It's saying stop, get out of my life, stop trying to control. I mean, Richmond, north of Richmond, they all want control. He's saying, no, I don't want you controlling my life.
Right. And so you could call that right wing, and today maybe it should be called that. But 10 years ago, that's just a pure libertarian ideal, which you could be a libertarian 10 years ago from the left or the right, and you'd still be a libertarian because your main thing was, I just want the government to leave me alone and leave my neighbor alone. And I think on your comment about the Overton window shifting, it has shifted so much that I think most libertarians now would probably say, yeah, I'm on the right, because the left has gone nutso banana pants.
In the past, they would have been on the left, but now they're on the right. I think that to answer, to bring this full circle and answer this question, is this a right wing? I would say no, this is an American wing, if you want to put it that way. This is old school Americana. This is what this is.
Yeah, I think that's right. If it seems like it's affiliated with one political side or the other, well, maybe it's because one political party has gone way too far.
Nutso.
Could be that. Well, so Richmond, north of Richmond, right wing? No, not really. There's an argument, but it's not a terribly strong one. But it's a good song. If you want to listen to it more, you should do that too. Andrew, do you have something?
Yeah. Richmond, north of Richmond. Don't go quietly into that dark night.
Rage against the dying of the light. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been the Pop Culture Contrarian podcast with Thomas Sterling and Andrew. We hope you'll tune in next time.
It's crazy to me because I remember back in June I played here for about 20 people, and but that's the beautiful part of this country, though, is even an idiot like me can make something happen. So if I can do it, you can do it. Before we start singing, and I mean we, because I hope y'all are going to be singing too. I just had something I felt compelled to share with you. This is in Psalm 37, 12 through 20. The wicked plot against the righteous and gnash their teeth at them, but the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he knows their day is coming. The wicked draw the sword and bend the bow, to bring down the poor and needy, to slay those whose ways are upright. But their swords will pierce their own hearts, and their bows will be broken. Better the little that have righteousness than the wealth of many wicked. For the power of the wicked will be broken, but the Lord upholds the righteous. The blameless spend their days under the Lord's care, and their inheritance will endure forever. In times of disaster, they will not wither. In days of famine, they will have plenty. But the wicked will perish. Though the Lord's enemies are like the flowers of the field, they will be consumed, and they will go up in smoke.